It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, here in Phoenix, Arizona, from the BEA beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. I got Scott Horton from Antiwar Radio going to get us caught up on what the heck, man. What the heck? We have, people, they're screaming. We're going into the Republican debates tonight, and I guarantee you they're going to talk about why we got to invade Syria. Syria is because the human beings are being whatever. Syria. Libya, good. It wouldn't be prudent at this juncture to pull out of there. We got Yemen we're bombing. Pakistan's got problems. It's going, Egypt still's not, pacified. Iraq is going to please stay. Afghanistan, we're not going to go out. I mean, what the heck, man? And who do we call? Who do we need to get us up to speed? Mr. Scott Horton. Hello. You got to help me out, man. Tell me what's up.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ernie. I'll try. Oh, so that's it?
Tell me, Syria, what the heck?
Well, listen, I don't really know, but in my gut, something tells me somebody at the Pentagon has got to know better than to get involved in Syria. I mean, I don't know how powerful the CIA is there, if they can actually do anything to help the revolutionaries overthrow the Ba'athist dictatorship there. It is a very cruel dictatorship. I mean, from my point of view, I sure hope that the people of Syria can overthrow it, but, I certainly don't want the Americans to help them, and I like to think that in Israel and in America that they are too scared of what might come next to want to help too much with the revolution there. I hope that that's the case because, if they have their own revolution, that's one thing, but if it's where we intervened, then that just means that we create bubbles of power among groups that don't, actually have it from the grassroots, and that ends up creating, basically like economic distortions in the power of different factions, and then that leads to corrections and worse violence. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen in Syria. I think when my gut tells me, Ernie, that when Senator Graham says, yeah, it's pretty much time to go do a regime change there, that even in Washington, D.C., they don't really agree with that. I could be wrong,
Well, this is how it always starts. That somebody gets, we got to do it. They're, put up that Led Zeppelin, see if it'll fly, and they got enough thrust with Israel and the support of various congressmen and the machine and the media and Fox News and every other cable news program to, just put some, thrusters on that Led Zeppelin, make that sucker float. And I'm going, okay, they start with this, and I'm wondering, who are they talking to? Why would they even bring this up? How is it that Syria all of a sudden got on our radar screen, especially when you got Russia going, Syria's ours, man. You sure you want to play this game? What game are they playing to even bring it up?
Well, I don't know about the Russians or what they do about it. I think it's pretty easy to see why the Americans, and for that matter the Israelis, would want to see a change in the government there. At least the worst of the pro-Israel hawks of the neoconservatives in this, on this side of the water here, like David Womser, for example, wrote years ago. He served Dick Cheney in the vice president's office and at the State Department back in the early Bush Jr. years. And he had written a thing called, I forgot what it was called, but it was all about how regime change in Syria is our real goal. And when the country falls apart, of course, it'll be chaos as the different factions go to war over who's going to end up ruling the state afterwards. And so what we want to do is expedite that chaotic collapse, he said, in order that, basically if it's not a strong Ba'athist dictatorship, if it's all just religious parties and whatever, as long as they're at war with each other and therefore weak, then we can have our way with less of a headache. On the other hand, I don't think the Israelis are actually that bad on this issue as far as, again, I'm on the side of the people who want to overthrow their own dictator, but as far as foreign intervention, I'm against it. And if you look, you'll see quite a few times, even the Netanyahu government has wanted to come to the table and deal with the Syrians, and were overruled, especially during the Bush years, because the Americans and the neocons are oftentimes more hawkish than the actual Likud party in power over there. So, but it's easy to make a whipping boy out of Assad because he's not our puppet, right? I mean, Gaddafi, we had brought him in from the cold. Our government had brought him in from the cold, and we were starting to make friends out of him again.
Yeah, right after we got him to deposit the money in our bank so we could seize it. I mean, they didn't stab Hosni Mubarak in the back like that. They tried to keep Hosni Mubarak as long as they could, and then when it was clear he was gone, then they called for his ouster, and then they did everything they could to put in the torture administrator Omar Suleiman in power. It was no secret about what they were doing. For Gaddafi, it was pretty easy to turn on him, and then we can look like we're the good guys on the side of the revolutionaries in at least one of these things. And so, of course, it's good PR in the case of Syria as well, that America's on the side of democracy against the dictatorship, when, of course, in Yemen and Bahrain, and, in fact, in Egypt and across the Middle East, America's still on the side of the dictator. Okay, give me an update on Yemen. I talked to a father and daughter team in Yemen, and they were saying, while they're in Yemen just last week, and they're telling me they're going, oh, the United States has been very good to us. They have supported the GCC's, the Gulf Cooperation, whatever the heck. They have come on our side, the people. They love the people, and they're putting pressure on, what's his name, and then he had to go get repaired in Saudi Arabia from shrapnel or something. Now, the problem, though, is I'm going, based on what? I mean, why would they go on your side? Are they going to side with the people in Saudi Arabia? And they go, well, no, that's different. Okay, then what's the freaking principle involved here? What determines whether the U.S. takes a side with the people in the streets or not? Help me out here.
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't think that that's actually right at all. I think that the Americans have been backing Saleh this whole time and hoping to keep him. Perhaps they've turned on him in the last week or so after it's already too late for him to stay in power, like in the case of Egypt. But really, he just got bombed, and I don't know who bombed him. I think first reports were it was an artillery piece, presumably shot by some kind of protester faction or rebel faction. But then again, other reports said, no, it was a planted bomb, so very well could have been, somebody almost as powerful as him, just doing an internal coup d'etat from the top, taking advantage of the chaos. And we don't really know, but I think, from what I can tell, Saleh has had a great relationship with the Bush and Obama administrations. He yells terrorism, and they give him money, and then he spends that money putting down opposition that, of course, has nothing to do with terrorism, like the Houthi rebellion of Shiites in the north and the socialists in the southeast. Those have traditionally been, the battles he's fighting, and using our resources to do it, and I guess arresting people and turning them over to the Americans for rendition and that kind of thing. So he's been cooperating with us this whole time. Publicly, they've criticized him a little bit, but even in the public criticisms, I guess they can't send him a private cable. They're scared of WikiLeaks or something. They can't say, look, we're just kidding, but we got to say this stuff on TV or something, So they're careful about what they say and haven't been very critical of Saleh at all. And then, of course, there's reporting, too. I talked with Patrick Coburn from the London Independent today, and he was talking about, the rest of the Saleh faction, his family and their tribal cohorts and whatever. They're not going anywhere, at least for now. They certainly don't want to. They're determined to fight it out, and they still have control of the military. And, for all we know, they'll be able to welcome Saleh back into power there. It's not clear at all that he's gone.
When we come back,
the spirit of the people of that country is something to be admired. They've been out in those streets peacefully protesting.
And we don't see anything. We don't see any of that in the mainstream media, the media that's so last century. This is daily. There are people out there, they're not happy. Not happy at all. When we come back, I want to talk about Saudi Arabia a little bit, Pakistan, where we at in Egypt. It's not going to stop. Who's going to help us? Who's going to help us understand? Scott Horton from antiwar.com/radio. We'll be right back with Scott in just a little bit.